Okay, so let's say you're getting ready for a civil engineer job interview, and you really want to make sure you're set up for success. I totally get it. Those interviews can feel pretty intense, almost like you're trying to, you know, build a bridge. But instead of steel and concrete, you're using, words and ideas. But hey, no worries. We've got you covered. We're diving deep into job interviewing for dummies today. We'll also be looking at some current hiring trends and all that, all to help you totally nail that interview.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's the best way to do that? We're going to run a mock interview, civil engineer style, right here, right now.
Awesome. I like it. Think of it as a practice run,
Yeah.
a chance to kind of stress test your interview skills in a safe space before the real deal.
Exactly. So let's start with the basics. The job market, it's changed a lot, even for civil engineers. We've got remote work, AI screening resumes. It's a whole new world out there.
Yeah, it does feel like the ground is constantly shifting these days. So how do we even navigate this new landscape and make sure we stand out?
Well, one thing that hasn't changed is the importance of preparation. That's always going to be your strongest foundation.
Makes sense. So where do we even begin with all of this?
Start with the job description. Think of it as your treasure map. It's not just, a boring list of duties. It's actually a guide to what they're really looking for in a candidate.
Okay, so we're talking about really dissecting that job description,
Mhm.
finding those keywords, those skills they really emphasize.
Absolutely. And then you use those keywords to build what I like to call your greatest hits stories. Specific examples of how you've used those skills to get great results in your past roles.
I like that a lot. So
Okay.
it's not just saying, I'm a problem solver.
Mm.
It's about, that time you figured out how to redirect a water main,
Yeah,
during a bridge renovation to prevent a major delay.
exactly. Interviewers want to hear those real world stories. They want to see, how you think, how you handle challenges. It brings your skills to life.
Right, because anyone can just list, skills on their resume.
Yeah.
But those stories, those are what make you stand out. Those are what they're going to remember.
And those stories, they also help you stay calm and focused during the actual interview. When you have those stories ready, you're less likely to get flustered by, any unexpected questions that come up.
That's so true. It's like having a blueprint for your interview answers. You know exactly what you want to build, and you've got the materials ready to do it.
Exactly. And speaking of blueprints, let's dive into some of those common interview questions and figure out how to construct those winning responses. You ready to build?
Let's do it.
Hmm.
I'm excited. Let's start with the classic, and maybe the most dreaded opener. Tell me about yourself. Ugh, I hate that one. How do we handle that one without sounding like a robot just reciting our resume?
Think of it as your elevator pitch. You've got a short ride to really get their attention. Who are you as a civil engineer? Why are you interested in this specific role? What makes you the ideal candidate?
Okay, so no rambling on about, my childhood love of building with Legos.
Right. Keep it relevant. Keep it concise. Highlight your key skills and experience. The ones that align with what's in that job description. And most importantly, show your passion for civil engineering. What gets you excited about building the world around us?
I love that. Because that passion is what makes you stand out right. It shows you're not just there for the paycheck. You actually want to make a difference.
Exactly. Now, another classic question. What are your strengths and weaknesses?
This one can be tricky.
Yeah, for sure. How do we talk about our strengths without sounding arrogant? And how do we address, weaknesses without completely shooting ourselves in the foot?
Well, honesty and self-awareness are key here. For strengths, you want to provide specific examples. Don't just say you're detail-oriented. Talk about that time you spotted a critical error in a bridge blueprint. The one that saved the project from huge delays and costs.
I like that. It's about showing, not just telling. So what about weaknesses then? Choose a weakness that's not going to be a total deal breaker, and then frame it as an area where you're actively working to improve. For instance, you could say, I've been working on my public speaking skills because I know how important clear communication is for a civil engineer. I recently joined Toastmasters, and I'm already seeing progress.
So it's about turning that potential negative into a positive, showing that you're always learning and growing.
Precisely, it shows self-awareness and a commitment to professional development. And remember, everyone has weaknesses. It's really what you do about them that matters.
It's like even the strongest bridge needs, regular maintenance and upgrades to stay in top shape.
Yeah.
We're all works in progress.
Well said. All right, another big one. Why do you want this job? This is where you really need to showcase your research and your enthusiasm for the company and the specific role.
Right, because generic answers get you generic results. Saying something like, I want to work here because it's a great company, That's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
It's exactly. Dive deep into their projects, their values, their company culture. What specifically excites you about working there? What unique contributions do you believe you can make?
It's like, why build this bridge? Not just any bridge, right?
Ah,
What makes it special? What makes it challenging?
exactly. Showing that you've done your homework and that you're genuinely excited about this opportunity, that's what sets you apart from other candidates. It shows initiative and a real interest in contributing to their success.
Wow. I'm starting to see just how much thought goes into preparing for these interviews.
Yeah.
It's almost like designing a project, you know.
Mhm.
You need a solid plan, the right materials,
Yeah.
and the ability to adapt to any unexpected challenges that pop up.
That's a great analogy. And just like with a construction project, the more prepared you are, the smoother the whole process will be. And that confidence will shine through in your interview.
This is all such great advice. Thank you. Now, I know we're going to be doing a mock interview later, so I want to make
Yeah.
sure we touch on those curveball questions. You know, the ones that can really throw you off balance?
Absolutely. We'll tackle those tricky questions like explaining gaps in your resume, handling salary expectations, talking about, those less than perfect moments in your career. We'll give you the tools and strategies to navigate those conversations honestly but effectively.
Okay, perfect. I'm feeling a lot more confident already just knowing what to expect.
That's what we're here for, to help you build that confidence and showcase your best self.
Well, I think I'm ready to put all this into practice. Am I ready for the mock interview?
Great, let's get started. Imagine you've just walked into the interview room. I'm the hiring manager, and I'm excited to learn more about you. Tell me, why are you interested in this particular civil engineering position? What makes it stand out to you?
Well, I've been following your company's work for a while now, and I'm really impressed with your commitment to sustainable infrastructure. I was especially excited to see your recent project, the one involving that new type of eco-friendly bridge design. It aligns perfectly with my own passion for creating structures that are both functional and environmentally responsible.
That's great to hear. Can you elaborate on your experience? With sustainable design principles, have you had a chance to apply them in your previous projects?
Absolutely. In my previous role at previous company name, I was actually part of the team that designed and implemented a rainwater harvesting system for a new office complex. We were able to significantly reduce the building's reliance on municipal water, which had a positive impact on the environment and the client's operating costs.
That's a fantastic example. It sounds like you have a solid understanding of how to integrate sustainable practices into those real-world applications. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about your technical expertise. Civil engineering, it relies heavily on teamwork, and these projects often involve, a diverse group of professionals. Can you describe your approach to working in a team setting?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a firm believer that open communication is like the foundation for successful teamwork. I really like to create an environment where everyone feels comfortable, sharing their ideas and perspectives, and where we can really brainstorm solutions together. And to make sure everyone is on the same page, I think it's super important to clearly define roles and responsibilities, like right from the get-go. That way, everyone understands how their individual contributions fit into the overall project goals.
That's a great point. Having those clear roles and responsibilities, it definitely minimizes confusion and keeps things running smoothly. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to work effectively as part of a team to overcome a particularly challenging situation?
Sure. I was working on this project once where during the excavation phase, we ran into some unexpected soil conditions. It was like a major issue that could have set us back significantly. But instead of, letting panic set in, I immediately called a meeting with the geotechnical engineer, the construction manager, and the client. We needed to brainstorm solutions as a team.
That sounds like a pretty critical moment. So what happened next?
Well, we all worked together to analyze the soil problem. We evaluated, various options, and ultimately we came up with a revised plan that addressed the issue, while also minimizing the impact on the project timeline. By really pooling our expertise and collaborating, we were able to keep the project moving forward.
It sounds like that collaborative approach really paid off. Now, I'm curious to hear a bit more about your long-term career goals. Where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years?
In 5 years, I hope to be taking on more project management roles, leading and mentoring teams on those challenging and innovative projects. I'm really drawn to the idea of using my experience and expertise to help shape the future of our built environment.
That's a great goal. What steps are you taking now to develop your leadership skills?
Well, I'm always looking for opportunities to lead and mentor others, even in my current role. I recently volunteered to lead some internal training sessions at my company. And I'm also mentoring a junior engineer. And on top of that, I'm actually working towards my project management professional certification to really broaden my, knowledge and credentials.
That's impressive. It sounds like you're very proactive about your professional development. Now let's get into some more technical questions, shall we? Can you explain the concept of soil-bearing capacity and its importance in foundation design?
Sure, soil bearing capacity is basically the ability of the soil to support the loads imposed by a structure. It's like a fundamental consideration in foundation design because it dictates what type and size of foundation is required to ensure the stability and safety of the structure.
Right. Can you give me an example of how you would go about determining the soil-bearing capacity for a specific project site?
Well, to determine the soil bearing capacity, we would typically conduct a geotechnical investigation. That involves collecting soil samples and performing, lab tests to analyze the soil properties, and then using the results of those tests, along with established engineering formulas and software tools, we can calculate the soil-bearing capacity for that particular site.
That's a very thorough approach. It sounds like you have a strong understanding of the process. Now, let's talk about your experience with construction management. Civil engineering projects, they involve a lot of moving parts, and coordinating with contractors and subcontractors is essential. Can you describe a project where you had to navigate those relationships effectively?
One project that comes to mind is the construction of a large water treatment plant. It was a really complex project with multiple contractors and subcontractors, all working on different aspects simultaneously. So my role involved carefully coordinating their schedules, closely tracking their progress, and making sure that their work consistently met the project specifications.
That sounds like quite a challenging role. How did you handle the pressure of managing so many moving parts?
Well, for me, the keys to successful construction management are organization and communication. I developed a very detailed project schedule, and I made sure to hold those, regular progress meetings to keep everyone informed and aligned. And I really can't overstate the importance of maintaining open and clear communication with all the parties involved. I was always available to answer questions, address concerns, and immediately communicate any changes or updates to the project plans.
It sounds like you have a good grasp of the importance of
Yeah.
clear communication and proactive problem solving, which are, essential qualities in construction management. Now I'd like to hear about a situation where you had to think creatively, maybe even outside the box, to solve a particularly challenging engineering problem.
Sure. We were tasked with designing a bridge across a river once, and this river had a very delicate and sensitive ecosystem. The traditional bridge construction methods would have been very disruptive to the surrounding environment. So we knew we had to find a more sustainable and less invasive approach.
That's a fascinating challenge. How did you approach it?
Well, we brainstormed a lot of different ideas. We finally decided to explore the use of prefabricated bridge components. The idea was that we could assemble these components on site, which would minimize the impact on the riverbed and the surrounding vegetation.
That's a really creative solution. What was the outcome?
It was a great success.
Yeah.
We were able to deliver a functional and aesthetically pleasing bridge while also minimizing our impact on the environment. It was really a rewarding experience to be part of a project that prioritized both, infrastructure and ecological preservation.
That's fantastic. You clearly understand the importance of finding innovative solutions that consider both the technical and environmental aspects of a project. Now let's talk about continuous learning. The field of civil engineering, it's constantly evolving, right? How do you stay up to date with the latest advancements in industry trends?
I'm a big believer in lifelong learning. To stay current, I make it a point to attend industry conferences and workshops. I subscribe to professional journals, and I engage with, online forums and engineering communities. I also believe that there's a lot to be learned from other engineers. I'm always eager to connect and hear about their experiences.
That's commendable. It sounds like you're committed to staying ahead of the curve. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about a topic that can be delicate. Salary expectations. What are your thoughts on compensation for this role?
Well, I've done my research on, typical salary ranges for similar positions in this area. And based on my experience and understanding of the responsibilities, of this specific role, I believe a salary range would be appropriate. I'm definitely open to discussing this further, of course. And I'm happy to take into consideration the company's compensation structure and overall benefits packages.
That's a very reasonable and well thought out approach. We can certainly delve into those details as we move forward in the process. Now, before we move on, do you have any questions for me about the role, the company, or anything else that's on your mind?
Yes, actually I do. I'm curious to hear more about the company's commitment to sustainability. Can you tell me about your environmental initiatives and how this specific role would contribute to those efforts?
That's a great question. Sustainability is really deeply ingrained in our company's values. We are actively working to minimize our environmental footprint. We promote green building practices, and we're committed to designing infrastructure that is resilient and adaptable to a changing climate. This particular role would play a key part in those efforts. For instance, we're currently developing a new public transportation system that aims to significantly reduce both traffic congestion and carbon emissions.
That's exciting to hear. I'm very passionate about sustainability, as I mentioned, and I'd be thrilled to contribute to projects that have a positive impact on the environment and the community.
It's wonderful to hear that your values align with ours. Well, we appreciate your time and the insights you've shared today. We'll definitely be in touch soon to discuss the next steps in the process.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you.
Great. Now, how are you feeling after that round of questions? I know we covered a lot of ground.
I'm feeling pretty good, actually. It's amazing how much more confident I feel. Having, gone through those questions and formulating my answers, it really helps to solidify those thoughts and strategies.
That's exactly why we do these mock interviews. Preparation builds confidence, and that confidence comes through in your responses.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that interviewing is a skill in itself. It's not just about showcasing your technical abilities. It's also about effectively communicating those skills, connecting with the interviewers, and presenting yourself in the best possible light.
You're hitting the nail on the head. Those soft skills are becoming increasingly important in today's job market. And honing those communication and interpersonal skills can really set you apart.
It makes me think about how even though we build physical structures, our ability to communicate effectively is like the foundation that supports everything.
That's a great analogy. Now, thinking back on those questions, what stood out to you the most? Was there anything that surprised you or made you think differently about the interview process?
I was surprised by how much I enjoyed talking about my career goals and my passion for sustainability. It reminded me why I chose this field in the first place. And you know what I'm truly passionate about? I think that enthusiasm really came through in my responses.
That's fantastic. Authenticity is so important in an interview when you're genuinely excited about the work and the company that shines through.
I'm also feeling much more confident about discussing my salary expectations now. Having taken the time to do my research and practice articulating my value, I feel more prepared to have those conversations and negotiate a fair compensation package.
That's wonderful to hear you bring a lot to the table, and knowing your worth is crucial. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with another question to think about.
Okay, I'm ready for that thought-provoking question.
All right, think about this. As civil engineers, we're kind of in the business of connecting things right. We build bridges, roads, tunnels, all these structures that bring people and places closer together. But what about the connections we make as individuals within the field? How can we leverage our networks and relationships to create more opportunities, not just for ourselves, but for, others in civil engineering as well?
That's a really interesting perspective. It's like we're not just building physical structures, we're also building a community of professionals who support and learn from each other.
Exactly. That community can be such a powerful source of inspiration, mentorship, and collaboration. So as you move forward in your career, think about how you can both contribute to and benefit from that network.
I'm definitely going to be reflecting on that. Thanks for giving me a new way to think about my role in the larger civil engineering community.
You got it. Remember, we talked about those curveball questions.
Yeah.
The ones designed to really see how you think on your feet. Let's tackle a few of those.
Okay, bring them on. I'm feeling a lot more prepared now.
All right, good. Let's say there's a gap in your resume. Maybe a period of unemployment. How would you address that without making it sound like a red flag?
Yeah, gaps in a resume can feel a bit daunting. It's like an unexpected detour in your career path.
That's a good way to think about it. But, detours aren't always a bad thing. They can lead to unexpected discoveries. The key is to be upfront about the gap, but then focus on what you learned during that time. Did you take any courses, volunteer, travel? All those experiences can contribute to your skill set and make you a more well-rounded candidate.
So instead of trying to hide the gap, I should use it as an opportunity to showcase, my adaptability and my commitment to continuous learning.
Precisely. Now, what if you've had several jobs in a relatively short period? Some people might call that job hopping, and it can sometimes, raise concerns for hiring managers.
Oh yeah, I could see how that could be tricky. How do you explain those moves without sounding like you lack commitment?
It's all about framing your experiences in a positive light. Focus on the reasons for those moves. Were you seeking growth opportunities, new challenges, a better cultural fit? Highlight your ambition and your proactive approach to shaping your career.
So I can use those experiences to demonstrate that I'm motivated to find the right fit, both for myself and for the company.
Exactly. Now let's talk about a question that almost everyone dreads. Salary expectations. How do you handle that conversation without undervaluing yourself or pricing yourself out of contention?
It's definitely a balancing act. You want to be compensated fairly, but you also want to be realistic and understand the market.
Absolutely. Do your homework beforehand.
Mhm.
Research typical salary ranges for similar positions in your area, and be prepared to articulate your value. What skills, experience, and achievements justify your asking price? Remember, it's a negotiation, so be open to discussing a range. But also, be clear about your bottom line.
It's like bidding on a project, right? You need to know your costs and your worth.
Precisely. Now, here's one that can really throw people off. Tell me about a time you failed. Nobody likes to talk about their failures. But this question is more common than you might think.
Yeah, that one can be tough. It feels like admitting you're not the perfect candidate.
But everyone makes mistakes. What really matters is how you learn and grow from those experiences. Choose a failure that's not a deal breaker, and then focus on the lessons you learned and the steps you took to improve.
So it was not about denying the failure, but about showing that I can learn from my mistakes and use those experiences to become a better engineer.
Exactly. It demonstrates self-awareness, humility, and a commitment to growth. Finally, let's tackle a question that can feel a bit like a track. What is your greatest weakness as a civil engineer?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. It feels like they're asking me to point out a flaw in my engineering toolkit.
It can feel that way, but remember, honesty and self-awareness are always appreciated. Choose a weakness that's not a core competency for the role. And then, just like with the failure question, frame it as an area where you're actively working to improve.
So maybe I could talk about my organizational skills, or how I'm working on staying up to date with the latest software advancements.
Those are good examples. And remember to be specific about the steps you're taking to address that weakness. It shows initiative and dedication to professional development.
This whole mock interview process has been incredibly helpful. I feel so much more prepared and confident now.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, preparation is key. The more you practice, the smoother those answers will become, and the more confident you'll feel walking into that interview.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that interviewing is a skill in itself. It's almost like another form of engineering, where you're designing and presenting the best possible representation of yourself and your abilities.
That's a brilliant way to put it. And just like with any engineering project, careful planning, attention to detail, and the ability to adapt and problem solve are essential.
I feel like I've not only gained, valuable interview skills, but I've also gained a deeper understanding of myself as a civil engineer and my goals for the future.
That's what we hope for with these deep dives. It's about empowering you to navigate your career journey with confidence and clarity. So go out there armed with your knowledge, your experience, and your authentic self. You've got this.
I'm ready to build that next chapter. And thank you so much for all the guidance and support. It's been incredibly helpful.
You're very welcome. We're always here to help you build your dream career brick by brick. Remember, no matter what challenges you face, you have the strength and resilience to overcome them. Just like a well-designed structure, you're built to last.
That's a great reminder. Thanks for tuning into this deep dive, everyone. We hope you found it insightful and empowering. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep reaching for your highest potential.